Hello and welcome to this brand new episode on data engineering solutions. Today, I'm super excited to bring you this much talked about interoperable solution that finally bridges the gap between Azure Databricks and Microsoft Fabric through the OneLake Catalog Federation. I'm really excited. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to enable this zero copy integration so you can query Fabric Lakehouses and warehouses data directly from your Databricks cluster without moving a single byte of data. So if you're happy, let's get started. Now, before we dive in, there are some prerequisites you need to take into consideration. So first, we must have a workspace enabled for Unity Catalog. And of course, we must follow the recommended network connectivity. We're going to also have Azure Databricks Compute, which must run on Databricks Runtime 18.0 or 18.1, which is the latest anyway. And of course, we must have SQL warehouses, which must be a prototype as serverless SQL warehouses and supported for now. In addition, we need necessary permissions to create resources in Azure, configure access in Microsoft Fabric, and of course, manage Unity Catalog in Azure Databricks. So enough of all of these talks. Let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a cluster which is going to be running on Databricks runtime version 18.1 beta. So this is my Azure Databricks workspace. So I'm going to come to the compute and you're going to see that I've got this 18.1 runtime setup. So I can see I've got this Abiola's cluster and it's currently running on the 18.1 beta, which is the most latest version. So you necessarily don't need this. You can actually use the 18.0 or above. But I'm going to be using this for my demonstration. So you can see this is up and running and we are good to go. In addition, you also need to create SQL warehouses, which is going to be a prototype. So I'm going to come to the SQL warehouses here. And then I've got this one, created. Unfortunately, it's actually not very much, working as expected because I'm using the Microsoft MVP tenant to perform all of this demonstration. But I think it's going to be enough for what I want to demonstrate. But you want to make sure that when you click on this create SQL warehouses, you have to choose the prototype. And of course, you need to provide a name. You have to choose the cluster size and do all of the details. But for me, I'm going to be using this very small 2x small size, and of course it's not actually up and running, but it's going to actually do the job. After this setup, I'm going to enable the Microsoft OneLake Federation from the previews as it is currently in beta. So I'm going to swipe to the right hand corner, click on this my initial and go to the previews. And I'm going to search for OneLake, and that's enough. And I'm going to say Microsoft OneLake Federation, and it's in beta channel. So we can query data directly from Azure OneLake storage using Unity Catalog Federation. So I'm going to turn this on, and then I'm just going to give this a refresh just to make sure it is ready to go. So once that's done, I'm going to proceed to set up my Azure authentication. So basically, OneLake Federation supports Azure Managed Identity, which is the recommended authentication method. And of course, it also supports Azure Service Principal. So for this demonstration, I'm going to be using the Managed Identity by simply creating a new access connector for my workspace. So I'm going to come to the portal.azure.com and I'm going to set for this access connectors for Azure Databricks. You can come to this box and search for the access connector, and then once I see that, just give that a click. So by default, we're going to have this default access connector created automatically when we provisioned the Azure Databricks workspaces, but I'm going to create a unique one for this demonstration that is for this managed identity authentication. So I'm going to click on create at the top, and in the basics, I'm going to choose the resource where this is going to be located. And then I'm going to come here and give this a name. I'm going to call this one OneLake Access Connector. You can actually give whatever name you like. And of course, you want to choose whichever region you want to provision this, preferably in the region that is closest to you. And I'm going to click on Review plus Create. And this is going to check if everything is fine. And once this is fine, I'm going to click on Create. So this is created in a matter of seconds. That's really easy. So I'm going to click on Go to Resource, and then we can see the access connector. By the way, let me just come to the Home tab and let me come here and then that should be the third one here. Yeah, OneLake access connector, give that a click. So we can see in the overview the name of the resource group, the location, the subscription, and so on and so forth. And then we also need this resource ID later on. So once this is sorted, I'm going to proceed to grant the managed identity permissions in Microsoft Fabric workspace settings. By the way, you probably observe that I'm using the same Entra users across the Azure portal, in my Microsoft Fabric account, and of course in the Azure Databricks. So this is really important. So I'm going to come to the Power BI, that is the app.powerbi.com. And of course, this is the workspace that contains the lake houses with our Delta tables that we want to query in Azure Databricks. But before we do that, I'm going to come to Manage Access, and I'm going to grant the newly created managed identity the necessary permissions on top of this Cornerstone workspace in order to be able to interact and to be able to access these resources in here. So I'm going to click on Add People or Groups, and I'm going to search for the OneLake access connector we just created. So I'm just going to type in OneLake, and there we go. Access connector, give that a click. And then we need to grant the necessary RBAC permission. So I'm just going to use the admin. You can use the member, which is the list you have to use. And of course, we have this contributor. But I'm just going to make this an admin and click on add. So this simply means we've granted the managed identities permissions on top of Microsoft Fabric workspace. And then we can move to the next stage. So we want to go ahead and create a storage credentials in Unity Catalog that's going to reference the managed identity we created not too long. So I'm going to come back to the Databricks workspace, and I'm going to go to the catalog, add, and I want to create a new credential. And then this is going to be a storage credential, and of course we can see the credential type as Azure Managed Identity. So let's give this a name. I'm going to call this one OneLake Cred, and we need the access connector ID that is associated with the access connector we just created. So I'm just going to come here, and this is what is needed, the resource ID. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to paste. So once that's sorted, I'm going to click on create at the bottom, and we have the storage credentials created. So we can see the overview, we can see the credential type as managed identity, the purpose is storage, and so on and so forth. That's sorted. So we want to go ahead and create a Unity Catalog connection to use the storage credential we just created to access our OneLake. So I'm just going to come back here, and I'm going to click on this plus sign again and click on create a connection. So let's call this one my OneLake con. You can give whatever name as your connection name, and then we want to come to the big one, which is the connection type. So this is going to be the OneLake because we've enabled that in the preview. So click on the OneLake, and this is the basic part of it. This is the beginning of the interoperability between Microsoft Fabric and of course the Azure Databricks. So we want to choose the OneLake here, and once that's sorted, we can click on next. So in the step 2, we need to provide the connection details. So this is going to include the credential that we want to use to access our data in Microsoft Fabric. So I'm going to click on this, and I can see the OneLake credential we just created. So this is managed identity, and then we also need the workspace ID where our item is resident. So I'm going to come here, and that's quite easy to locate. So I can see this is the workspace name, and I can come to the URL. So I can see everything from this / down to this point is the workspace ID. So I'm going to copy that into the clipboard, and I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to Ctrl V to paste and click on create connection. And then we can see we have the connection created successfully. And then we also need to provide the data item. So you can see Microsoft OneLake Lakehouse or data warehouse ID. So this basically supports the Lakehouse and of course the warehouse fabric items. In our case, we are dealing with Lakehouses. So I'm going to come back here, and before I provide the Lakehouse ID, I'm going to come here, demo 101 Lakehouse. So in this Lakehouse, I've got 3 Delta tables, the HR analytics, marketing analytics, and of course the sales analytics that we want to run federated queries on in our Azure Databricks workspace. So we're going to be seeing all these three tables in Databricks without copying or moving any of the data. And that's the beautiful part of all of this. Having clicked on this, I can see here, so we have lake houses. So all of these are automatically the lake house ID. So I'm going to copy to this point, Control C, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to Control V to paste. And very importantly, we need to validate whether this is actually correct or not. So I'm going to click on test connection, and then I'm going to come here and choose the cluster. Oh, this actually shuts down. So I'm going to quickly just click on this and wait for this to be fired up. So the compute is up and running again. So I'm going to click on test to test the connection. And there we go, connection established. So I'm going to click on close, and then we can click on create catalog at the bottom. And then we can see successful, your catalog, my OneLake con catalog has now been created. So we can just perform the rest of the access. So I'm not going to bother doing anything much on the all workspaces access. So I'm just going to come to the bottom and click on next. And then for the metadata, this is fine for demonstration. I'm going to click on save. Amazing. So we have the foreign catalog created, and this is named as my OneLake con catalog. And we can see the name of the owner, the type as foreign catalog, and of course the connection is OneLake. So we've got this DBO schema that I've got in my Lakehouse, and of course I've got these three Delta tables: the HR analytics, marketing analytics, and of course sales analytics Delta tables. And you can see all the three tables replicated in my Azure Databricks Unity catalog. Absolutely fantastic. Now let's go ahead and inspect, for example, the sales analytics Delta table. I'm going to click on that, and I can see the overview, and these are the list of columns present in there. And then when I click on the sample data, all right, so we can see the sample of our sales analytics data. Now let's go ahead and run the federated queries on this data. So we can use the SQL editor, and of course we can also use the notebook. But let me just use the notebook because I don't have the SQL warehouses prototype successfully created. So I'm going to just create a new notebook, and I can just use the SQL language. Let me just turn this from Python to SQL, and then I can perform a simple select star from, and then I can expand the catalog, expand the schema, and I can use these double chevrons to populate the three namespace, the name of the for the catalog, the schema, and of course the name of the table. And let's just see the 10 records. So I'm just going to attach this to the Abiola's cluster. And of course, somehow I discovered that the serverless worked, but it's going to take time before it executes. But let me just use this Abiola's cluster compute we created. So this is now attached, and I'm going to press Control Enter to run the cell. And then we're going to see our data returned. Amazing. So we're able to read the content of the sales analytics table that is coming from our OneLake. So this is how we can implement and run federated queries on OneLake data in Azure Databricks. I trust you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel because there's a lot to come. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.